Hi, it's Elizabeth Miller at Paris House Woolworks and North Atlantic Fiber Arts. And I've had a studio, I guess, for over a decade now. And I have also made a bunch of other videos for our YouTube channel. But what I have not done is made a beginner how-to video for basic rug hooking. And that's what we're going to do next. So keep watching. Okay, so I have linen stretched out over my frame as a foundation. There are other foundations. There is monk's cloth and rugwarp, which are both cotton foundations. I happen to be using linen today. And I have two different kinds of hooks. One is a traditional grip hook, which is held with the thumb and forefinger right at the collar, with the hook pointing up. And then the other is a pencil hook, also with the hook pointing up, but held like a pencil. My personal preference is the pencil hook, but I'm going to show you both and you'll get an idea of how they both work. It's really personal preference and what you're comfortable with. So in addition to that, I'm going to show you both directional style hooking, which I have an example of here. You can see that the loops go in a direction. They are parallel to one another, following the design. This is a very traditional approach, and I always teach my students this first because I feel like if you can do this, you can hop over to the non-directional type of hooking, which I am going to show you is a little bit more like this, where the loops are not going in any particular direction. And this can also be really useful if you're using what we call alternative materials, but really they should be used as often as anything else, like taffeta, yarn, silk, whatever you want to use in your work. So we're going to cover both of those techniques. I'm going to start with directional hooking. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my worm. This is called a worm. I'm going to hold it between my thumb and forefinger like this. And then this is going to go on the underside of my foundation. So I'm going to grab my hook and I'm going to hold it like this. This is going to be straight up, and I'm going to go down through the foundation and I'm going to grab it like this. You want to make sure when you grab your worm or whatever it is you're grabbing that the whole thing is nestled nicely into the edge of that hook. And that is because if you were to grab it here, you could very well split your yarn or wool. So I'm just going to show you a couple of loops. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in at kind of an angle and I'm going to pull up a tail. I like all the tails to be on the front, so I'm going to leave that tail right there. I'm going to go back down, and this time I've brought up a loop. I'm going to go back down in the next hole and bring up another loop. I'm going to go back down in the next hole and bring up another loop. Now at this point, I need to be skipping a hole rather, because if I continue in every hole, these loops are going to become too tight. And so I need to skip a hole. And I'm going to bring up the next one. Now often with brand new hookers, what happens is they bring up a loop and the loop behind it pulls out. Can you see that happening? There's a way to very easily remedy that. I'm going to go in, I'm going to bring it up, and when I bring it up, I don't want to be pulling in this direction. I want to be pulling straight up or even a little bit to the back so that the pressure isn't in such a way that it's going to pull the loop behind it out. If you were to come to the end of your worm, and we're going to pretend we're at the end of the worm, I'm just going to cut it, you would want another tail sticking up at the top. And to begin again with a new worm, you would go into the same hole, bring up a tail, and continue on. Now I'm also going to show you hooking, which I'm more comfortable with the pencil hook. So I'm just going to keep hooking, and now I have these tails sticking up. What you do as you hook is you just trim those off right even with the loops, and they disappear into your piece. You will not see them. I always put mine just in a little jar. You will not see them again. So that's the basic way. If you were to hook right next to this, you're just going to go again, maybe 1 or 2 threads over. You don't want to start where you left off. It's nice to stagger the ends. And you just hook right next door. And as I said, this is directional hooking. So what this ends up looking like is like our directional hooking example. You can hook this in curves, straight lines, and it gives a really nice Berber, neat and tidy effect. However, I will say, do not be afraid as a new hooker to have uneven loops or anything like that. Evenness is not necessary, and additionally, you are going to steam and block your piece at the end. So I just want to show you real quick a non-directional technique, and I have some beautiful, beautiful alternative materials here, although you can certainly absolutely use wool strip for this too. But say you were filling in an area. With this technique, you're not worried about the directionality of the loops. You're just pulling up and filling an area randomly. And this creates a beautiful, abstract, impressionistic approach. This happens to be silk that I'm using right here. I hook both ways. I love this. Here's some hand spun that an artist friend of mine made. Also comes up just beautifully in a random way. You're just going down and grabbing it and bringing it up. You know, if we wanted to do this with wool strip, you could do that too. Just bring it up and bring it up, filling in your spaces. So these are 2 very common styles of rug hooking. They're both pretty simple, as you can see. And I would be happy to help anyone. If you want to get started, just get in touch with me at either northatlanticfiberarts@gmail.com or parishousewoolworks@gmail.com. And you can also find me at both parishousewoolworks.com and northatlanticfiberarts.com. And get in touch. I'll be happy to answer any questions. This is just a short 9 or 10 minute video, so I realize that this is just the very beginning. But fundamentally, if you want to learn to hook, that simple technique is all you need to create a piece like this that has, you know, a very uniform look, or a piece like this where I've used a lot of different textures. You know, your wool strips can be cut or torn. These are hand torn. They're very wide. So many things you can do with this one basic, simple technique. And that is why I love rug hooking so much. And I hope you do too. Thanks.